Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I call the meeting to order. Call the roll.
Barker,
Here.
McCain,
Here.
Wertz,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Rust,
Here.
Trent,
Here.
Griffin,
Here.
Ware.
Here.
Say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now it's time for public comment. Do we have anyone wishing to address the board?
Good evening. Tonight, we want to take a moment to celebrate Brenda McCain. As many of you know, she joined the Board of Trustees in 1999, and tonight is her last board meeting. After 24 years, working tirelessly and with passion to make Lewis and Clark a great place for students, team members, and community members. She has served with love and kindness. She's been a constant through a lot of change and now has decided to hand off this important role to our next generation. We appreciate you and are grateful for your service. You have made Lewis and Clark a better place. You've made a positive impact in the lives of many, including mine, during your time here at Lewis and Clark. While serving here at Lewis and Clark, Brenda also worked and volunteered in many different roles in our region. She is nothing short of amazing. So, on behalf of the faculty at Lewis and Clark, thank you for your voice, your vision, and your unwavering support. Best wishes in this next chapter. Please accept these beautiful flowers as a small gift for all you've done. Thank you. So.
It has been my honor and privilege to serve on this board. Someone told you all I have an ugly cry, right? Because it's coming out, I told Dwight. It's been an amazing privilege these years. To Jill, Donna, Larry, Dwight is my rock. It's been an experience, Julie, Kevin, but I've certainly enjoyed serving the students, this community, forging relationships with all of you. It has been my pleasure, and it pleases my heart to see the direction in which we will be going. So thank you all so very much from the bottom of my heart.
Okay, Dr. Traska, would you?
Yeah, so I'll take a moment here and thank Joel Barker, who has spent the last year with us as the student trustee. And while I can't follow that last speech, I do want to thank you for your service as trustee. You've represented the students well. You've been a great ear for me and a person to lean on as president to better understand and hear the student voice. And quite frankly, I've appreciated your leadership and your participation in this work. And I wish you nothing but the best going forward. You are a remarkable young man, and I know that it's just getting started for you. So thank you, Joel, for all you've done. And on behalf of the trustees, the campus, we appreciate all that you've done. Thank you. Plaque for you. You want to take this? Yep. There you go. Thank you, man. I'll see you.
Yeah,
It's just so strange. He's just gone. You know?
I'm disappointed he did not want to stay. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve appointing Melissa McCaig as student trustee?
Motion.
Okay, any discussion? Call the roll.
Wertz,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Ware.
Yes.
Okay, motion approved. Ms. McCaig, will you please take the the podium to take the oath of office. Sue, you'll administer the oath.
That's fine, go ahead. I will. I, Melissa McKay, having been duly appointed to the office of the member of the Board of Trustees of Community College District number 536, Lewis and Clark Community College, Madison, Macoupin, Jersey, Calhoun, Greene, Morgan and Scott, counties, state of Illinois. Aforesaid, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the state of Illinois, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Trustees according to the best of my abilities.
All right, have a seat. Okay, we have a project update by Hastings and Shabeta.
So gentlemen, if you're on, want to welcome you and look forward to your update. We've got Chris, and there we are.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Shavetta with Hastings and Shavetta Architects, and joining me tonight is Carl Dreyfall, my partner in crime, or I could say my project manager that keeps us organized and moving forward. It's an exciting time to update you on your project. We've been working diligently over the last several months since the first of the year to understand the scope of the main complex renovation. We've been interfacing with the main complex mover team. We've been doing analysis of the building, and we've been interviewing campus stakeholders as well. I'm sorry to see Joel go because he was our leader for our student effort, but Melissa, we look forward to you stepping in that role as the project continues on. So it'll be great to have you participate. We've been working through a series of workshops over the last several months. We started in January, February, and we had one in early March. We've also been doing a lot of due diligence on the building that has consisted of looking at the existing mechanical systems, the roof, the gutters, hazardous materials in the building. We've had historical preservation look at the building as well. We've also been doing some planning modules and some what we call conceptual designs of how the building might be organized. As our workshops began, we had these large group stakeholder meetings. We then broke into smaller group meetings to really understand the needs, the adjacencies of how the campus would really take advantage of the main complex renovation overall. So it's been an exciting time for everyone. You know, in our first workshop, we actually polled our participants about what would be the key elements that we need to look at in this project. And from that, Carl, can you go to the next slide for me, if you don't mind? Thank you. We came up with some key goals that were really established for this. One was enrollment services, the bursar's office, academic success, career development, counseling, all coming together in order to kind of bring what they would call a synergy, you might say, to the building and to the student experience from the first time they walked onto campus until the last day that they were on campus. We heard from the students that this became their home, but when they came there for the first time in the existing complex, it was a lot of different departments they had to travel to. They had to go back and forth. So we've tried to, what I'll say, comprehensively develop a plan to let students have one-stop shop as you come to campus. You'll also see that signage and wayfinding was an issue because they were traveling all over campus, and the deferred maintenance in the building we need to address with the renovation scope as well. So these were just a few of the goal-setting priorities that we established with the committee through a series of interviews and a few on-campus surveys as well. Part of our other analysis involved looking at your classroom schedule to understand the rooms we'd have to bring back into the main complex in order to support your academic growth and your programs. So we started looking at a couple of different fall information. We looked at fall of 19. We looked at spring of 2020, which really wasn't a COVID time, which wasn't appropriate. So we used the fall of 19 data. But you'll see your rooms were heavily utilized at certain times of the day. And we know this building that's used after it's been vacated has been spread across campus. So we want to bring some back We want to bring some of that academic to light, you might say, back into the building as well, where students want to congregate. As we've gone through this process, we've developed a comprehensive space program. So working with your campus stakeholders, we identified the key departments that would be located in the building. They might be there now, or they might be remotely located due to some of the issues and deferred maintenance in the building. But we started talking to each department, understanding their current space needs, their future growth opportunities, and the adjacencies between these departments about how a student enters campus, how it begins the enrollment process, how it re-enrolls the next semester and the next year, and so forth. So while we have a grand total of 37,000 square feet of space, the complex is much larger than that. So we haven't accounted for the faculty offices, we haven't accounted for the classrooms in this, the circulation space, and other things. You'll see that in the conceptual drawings that we'll present in just a moment about how we've organized the building to be responsive to the physical requirements of these departments, but also more importantly, kind of that experiential effort of everybody coming to the building. With this, I'm going to turn it over to Carl to talk a little bit about how we started looking at the campus and the entries to this building and how we built upon that. Carl?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So in looking at the campus map and an aerial photo and identifying where current members of the school and visitors, for that matter, park and make their way toward the main complex, we noticed that there were several routes that here are identified in yellow, but that in making your way to the main complex, it took a little bit of navigation, and that the kind of courtyard area on the backside of the main complex wasn't used, but that could be a nice focal point for those that are trying to make their way to the main complex. And also looking at vehicular access to the site, we thought that those entering on the south at the Phobes building would create a logical place to enter that building and the whole complex, and then from there could navigate to the north through the building, and and that north and south existing corridor would be a nice orientation kind of spline of all the different departments that need to be occurring within the main complex. So in working through the concept plans, you'll notice that we have two orange shaded elements. They're both labeled new entrance, and in the center here in the courtyard, we thought that a new addition of the shapes, still to be determined. This is simply a placeholder to identify this entrance, but really could orient those moving through the campus from the east through the main campus. And that would signify an entry point kind of on that side. As I also mentioned, on the south side at Phobes, we're anticipating a new entry that would really signify those, especially visitors entering the main complex, as there are a number of entrances to the building. This would be identified as kind of that primary entrance for those visitors and existing current students, faculty, and so forth. Here again, to kind of start the process through the main complex in kind of a logical fashion. The big idea in explaining this concept is that all of the enrollment process and those departments that are kind of logically adjacent to enrollment would be in this Phobes building, and we would orient them in kind of a vertical position. So the current stair here in the middle of Phobes would be opened up, and you could start here at the kind of entry level and work your way up as you need to progress from enrollment to financial aid or the bursar's office, and even the assessment center. From this level of Phobes and moving north, you would also run into other departments or adjacent spaces that would be ideally located off of this circulation path running north to south, such as the bookstore, the DEI department, and some spaces in Reed, such as what we're saying would be a good spot to renovate into student lounge, clubs, and gaming space that we heard from Joel and other students. And moving up to the next level, on the south, starting in Phobes, we would have financial aid and Bursar, as I mentioned. We would here again stack these critical enrollment adjacencies with the different departments. And then as you would move then north through the building, we would also have academic affairs, mental health and counseling with the nurse's office, some of these other kind of, really direct student departments off this central kind of spline. So all of these areas in color note different departments and areas that we see being updated. And then again, those in orange were new construction. Moving up to floor 3, in Phobes, we would have the placement center, access and accommodation. And then moving into Baldwin and Caldwell would have primarily classrooms and offices. The Early Childhood Center would be relocated into this position. But the thought here again, and as Chris mentioned, we haven't shown the classrooms or offices in the program yet. Currently, most of those are going to be kind of renovated in their current locations, and those classrooms that were accommodated elsewhere on campus or off campus could come back into this space as desired. As you know, floor 4 also is primarily classrooms and offices, and those offices currently on floor 5 that are still being occupied would be lightly renovated, primarily with their current occupants. We are currently have been talking to the school about phasing strategies and have a concept that has been well received. We're currently developing some better graphics to kind of illustrate what we see as that phasing plan. And so that will be shared in a forthcoming discussion. And our next steps as we kind of wrap up the programming phase are to continue to refine the phasing strategy and then create those graphics, as I mentioned. We will continue to pull together project and construction cost data. As Chris mentioned, we've been working with our historical consultant. We've had roof assessments completed, asbestos sampling completed. And so we're continuing to pull together all those costs into a format that can then be presented to Lewis and Clark for review. Upon that review, establish priorities, kind of nail down the scope based on those priorities. And then all of this data would be pulled together in a final report by the end of April. After CDB review, Lewis and Clark's review, we would then begin what we call basic design services. And then after basic services, construction would start with a timeline to be determined.
With that, we'd like to open it up for any questions the board or other members in attendance tonight might have for us.
Any questions?
Hi, this is Donna Ware. Sorry, guys. So the 2 additions that you're proposing, how tall are those intended to be?
We were looking at the addition onto Phobes maybe being at least 2 stories, maybe 3, in order to accommodate a vertical fire stair within that location at the south end of Phobes. And then we were also looking at the new addition on the back of Caldwell being high enough in order to accommodate an elevator to get into the main portion of the building. While there is an elevator there, we're worried about the code implications of the elevator not being large enough to meet the current code requirements for ADA accessibility.
Do we have an idea of square footage, the size of those additions as well?
No, we haven't worked through that design yet. That's something that we've just programmed out and we're showing it and we're estimating it currently right now to see what we can build in those locations. But we were looking at as a new way to circulate vertically through the complex on all the different floors, particularly the addition to the west side, Caldwell.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and it looks fabulous so far, and it's very exciting. So keep us posted, and thank you so much.
We will. Thank you very much. We've enjoyed working with the committee, and we thank everybody for their time and attention over the last couple of months, and looking forward to finishing up the report and moving forward into basic services. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great night. Take care.
Traska, I think you're up next with
Yeah.
the budget, health, and enrollment update.
Sure, so a quick update on this. So as of the end of February, our revenues in our operating funds are up 1.1 million from February of last year. The leading contributor is still corporate personal property replacement tax revenue, which has increased at 564,000 from this time last year. When comparing actual this year to actual last year, we are also seeing increases in other areas such as tuition and fees, tax revenues, and facility rentals. Academic support and student grants and scholarships have increased from February of this year as well. We would expect to see an increase in these areas to support our commitment of investing and supporting our students through our strategic plan, key directions. Overall, our projected ending revenues and expenses for the year are consistent with our projected ending balances of last month's report. So again, want to reaffirm that things are still looking very good, and I always want to give that sort of accolade to our team and everyone at the department level for being great stewards of our money and investing it in wise ways to support our students. So thank you.
So did you have a separate one on enrollment?
Yeah, so Dr. Jackson is going to give us a brief update on enrollment.
Just waiting for my turn. Good evening. So super excited to announce that spring 2023, the enrollment report came from ICCB, and their increase of the state average was 7.2%, and Lewis and Clark, we were at 9.2% increase. So extremely excited, want to thank the entire team and the campus, of course. It is definitely a team effort, so excited that we were able to beat that state rate, so extremely excited. For summer 2023, what we are tracking currently, our total head count, we're at 554 students. We're up 5.7% from last year. Last year, this time, we were at 524 students. So we are still continuing to increase and push for those students. We are down a little in total credit hours. We are 2,920, which is actually a 4.8% increase, but of course, a little down from the total head count. So we are continuing to work on that. We are creating a calendar for our recruiter to go out into the community to make sure that we are tapping into the community events, making sure we're getting Lewis and Clark out in the forefront. We, of course, want to make sure that Lewis and Clark is the first choice, not just the backup choice for our students. So our early bird registrations continue. We have Marquette coming up this Friday, so we are continuing to move forward with those events. Any questions?
So you mentioned Marquette. Does that mean that somebody goes to that particular school, or what happens when there's an early bird registration?
Absolutely. So we've actually we started this year in February. So again, we're continuing through April. The last one will be at the end of the month, I believe the 26th of April. So we actually invite the high schools to come in. So any high school students that are interested in coming to Lewis and Clark, they actually get priority registration into the classes to make sure that by the time that they come register, that the classes are not full. So it's really priority registration for them. They get to tour the campus and really get the full college experience for their day. They meet with financial aid and advisor. They do a tour of the campus. We have our student ambassadors that really get that experience with the actual student.
So when you mention a particular high school, that means you probably promoted it at that high school to encourage kids to come on that particular day.
Absolutely. It's really been helpful to have our liaisons in the high school because they advertise, they market, they put flyers up, they work with the high school counselors and the students. So it's actually a great opportunity for them to come out to the school, experience what we have to offer. Their parents usually come with them as well.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful too if they could see their friends are coming, you know, the group momentum going, so.
Absolutely.
great.
It used to be a field trip for the students. Now the schools are cracking down. The counselors are making sure if the students are really interested in Lewis and Clark that they get that experience versus just coming maybe because their friend is coming or just to get a day out of school. So we've seen a lot of growth and excitement around from the schools and the students because it's actually now an experience they're interested in.
Yeah, and that 9.2% that you mentioned, that's like in the books now, right? There's no adjusting that? It's not
That is no
changing.
adjusting. That's for spring 2023.
Yeah.
It's set in stone, in ink, no changing.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is there
Yes.
any place on ICCB website or anything where we can get enrollment numbers that do not include high school partnership enrollment?
Absolutely. So on the, I can actually send you the report as well. We got that report for spring 2023 that is included in there. Also, I can send out a chart as well, the chart that Dr. T usually includes in the board updates. It has it broken down. So the total head count that I present, the 554, that does not include any high school partnership students. Those are just all full-time, either concurrent enrollment students that are paying full tuition or just full-time traditional students.
Okay, I see it's in our numbers, but I couldn't find it anywhere on the ICCB website or the reports.
I can definitely, like I said, I can send you a report, and then I can check with Dennis Creed. He's our IR specialist, and he should be able to point us in the right direction.
Yeah, it would seem like it would be in the spring report, the enrollment report, but it's not.
Do you have this chart, the Lewis and Clark enrollment overview? Oh, that's the full report. Okay, yeah, that's the ICC full report. I can provide you what I have for Lewis and Clark. Anything beyond that, I can work with IR to get that information for you.
Would you agree that that's really the numbers, the enrollment numbers that we need to focus on?
Absolutely. We should be reporting on total head count of students that are total enrollment, and then the high school partnership should be, out of that number.
Yeah. So like the 9.2 enrollment increase that we've had over last spring includes high school partnership. So we don't know what it is without high school partnership. Well, we know what it is, but we don't know how to compare it to our rest of the community.
From my understanding, when Dennis reports, it does not include the high school partnership number, but I can verify that information with
I
him.
believe it does.
Okay, I can verify it for you. Like I said, I'm not looking at what you're looking at right now.
I think it was last March, February, March, we refocused the enrollment report to have that broken out. So for that very reason, because one could argue that you know, we'll get philosophical. So you have dual credit, you have dual enrollment, and then you have your traditional sort of enrollment that has nothing to do with high school partnership. And so all of that is broken out separately. How ICCB reports it, you know, I mean, we can dig into that a little bit more, but we want to report it to where here are our traditional student enrollments and here are high school partnership enrollments, which would just include dual credit, because a concurrent enrolled student, although they're a enrolled student from high school earning dual credit with a college faculty member, that would actually count in our normal college enrollment.
Right.
So the dual credit is separate. That's like typically taught at the high school by a high school teacher with the credentials to do that, and so that's always reported separately. Because we want to look at that strategically as well. I mean, what else do we want to do with dual credit? And we've sort of made a conscious effort to shift more toward a concurrent enrollment focus, because we generate revenue, the students get that college experience, and so that's kind of where we want to focus. But we'll still have dual credit. I mean, there's a balance that I think needs to happen, especially with some of our rural schools, which access is still difficult, you know, because.
Yeah, it just would be a whole lot easier if we had
Sure.
ICCB numbers to compare ourselves to, because right now we're just comparing total enrollment.
Yeah.
And we look good, 7.2 increase, I mean, a 9.2% increase versus what they're showing is 7.2, but we don't know what the effect is of high school enrollment.
Yeah.
So, dual credit enrollment. I did have another question. I noticed it's curious to me that, you know, there's a breakout that shows like CTE students versus transfer students. And most colleges, they have like, it's basically close to like a 2-to-1 ratio. They have 2 transfer students for every 1 CTE student. But Lewis and Clark is just the opposite. We have 2 CTE students for every transfer student. Yeah, I mean, it's just curious to me that we stand out for that. Is that, I mean, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm just curious.
You know, I would say that that probably is indicative of the community, the environment where students are going right into a job versus students who are transferring. I think that would vary by region and by expectation of whatever that student wants to do. To your point, it's not a good thing or a bad thing. And quite frankly, that could shift on an annual basis. I mean, arguably it could, but it just depends on the student's desire and what their expected outcome is. And, you know, also you could argue that it reflects that we have, I mean, well, there's really no way to say this because we have great transfer programs and we have great career and tech ed programs. It's just a matter of what that student wants to do. So, yeah.
Could it be, maybe, could it possibly be the proximity that we are to St. Louis and especially to SIUE, that there's more
perhaps
Warrior people that are going there? I don't
yeah, perhaps. I mean, it's speculative, but perhaps, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
What a good question. Thanks, Dr. Jackson.
Okay, the omnibus agenda is presented for a vote. Is there any item the board would like to be held out and voted separately?
I'd like to consider item H as in Henry separately, J as in James, and N as in Nancy.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the omnibus agenda pulling out H, J, and N?
Motion.
Okay, I have a first and second. Any discussion? Okay, call a roll.
McCaig?
Yes.
Wertz?
Yes.
McCain?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Rust?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Griffin?
Yes.
Ware?
Yes.
Okay, motion approved. Do I have a motion to approve item H?
Motion.
Second.
I have a first and second. Any discussion?
Yes, I have just a few questions on the first item there. Once again, of course, we have no competitive bids, and I'm kind of especially surprised in this case because the Henry Schein Company is a supplier of ours. I don't know why they wouldn't have quoted on this. When was the quote issued on this? And when are we supposed to start the project?
So I know this project, we wanted to start pretty quickly because we want these installed by the fall semester. Can someone help me out? Yeah, Sue, when a couple, February maybe this went out?
This went out, I'm trying to think, this is April.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, either February or early March. And we want to do the work over summer. And we have a small window to do it in between our summer session and the start of fall. So we want to hit that sweet spot. But yeah, we were surprised that we wouldn't get at least 2 quotes because Henry Schein has the other big group, but I don't know, it could be availability of equipment.
We had estimates from both of them.
Yeah, we did get quotes from both of them, but only 1 bid.
Did they say why they didn't quote?
No,
Did we ask them?
No.
I didn't ask them.
We didn't ask them why they didn't quote?
No, they gave us quotes, but they didn't bid. And it's, you know, they present it sealed, so. We didn't go back after.
Wait a minute, it sounded like you said they gave us quotes, but they didn't give us a bid.
They gave us quotes,
Yeah,
estimates, but they did not go through the formal bid process.
okay.
And
Seems like a distinction without a difference, but
I don't know if it's typical practice to ask why somebody didn't bid. I mean, I don't know, Dennis, what your thought is. I've never seen that anywhere I've been because then where does that stop? Oh, that's the reason why. Well, let's reopen it up. You know, I mean, I think you give everyone an opportunity to, in this case, provide quotes, and then they have the opportunity to bid and they didn't. So, I mean, unless you just randomly call them, but I don't know if we want to get into that practice.
I just wonder if we didn't provide enough lead time.
They had already given us estimates, both companies, so.
It would appear they had enough lead time if they provided an estimate.
Our maintenance department solicited estimates just so we could kind of get an idea of a total cost before we went out to bid. And both Benco and Henry Schein gave us estimates. The bid was exactly what was on those estimate pages. So I'm not sure why they didn't bid, but they took the time to give us an estimate, both companies.
I would say it's probably a supply issue, labor. Business Journal had a big section this week about housing and equipment for like electrical switch boxes. Used to be 15 weeks, now it's 52 weeks.
Yeah, but I would have thought that, and I'm sure we did know back last fall that we were going to do this.
No, we didn't.
Why not?
We made this priority when we found out, you know, from the department that, hey, you know, we really have a need here. We started looking at our operational fund balance and looking at priorities. We'd never done that before. So, you know, as everyone knows, we have an opportunity to reinvest these dollars. So when the opportunity came up, we brought this to the board. I updated the board, I think, and I want to say late fall, and said this was a priority that we wanted to look into. So we started down that road, made the commitment. You all approved that. And then we went out and got our bids and quotes, et cetera. So,
And this actually came to us through our maintenance department.
Yeah.
They worked directly with the dental clinic, and we were spending countless hours over there repairing equipment. We couldn't find replacement parts. You know, this was the original equipment whenever we built the dental clinic, so it's, 14 years old. And we wanted to send some of our new members of maintenance to training to learn how to operate the equipment, but it's so outdated, it would be pointless to send them to a training. They'd be learning a new technology on these chairs and wouldn't be learning what we currently had in place. So when maintenance brought that to us, we worked with Sue and the dental staff to try to fast track this.
And I'd also add, I think it was last year, we had charged Wolf and his team to create a comprehensive and progressive deferred maintenance plan. And so from a planning perspective, I mean, all these things are on our radar, but everything obviously requires a certain level of investment. A lot of times that's a very healthy investment. So I think, you know, that was prioritized through maintenance and prioritized by us to say, okay, what has the most direct link to the student learning experience? And obviously with one of our, you know, top programs, we wanted to make that investment. So, I mean, I feel confident that we've done everything that we needed to do to make this work. So.
Yeah, and both dental hygiene and dental assisting went through a program review this year as well, and that was their top priority.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the priorities and whether it was needed or not. I'm just questioning why, you know, for what Laurie just said a while ago, just enforces the fact that we knew that this was a need long, you know, months ago, not just in February and March. And given the fact that we know that there's supplier problems, there's labor problems, you know, and on, we need to be a little more proactive on getting these projects lined up and going so that we can get competitive bids. Because the way it's going right now, this is at least the third, maybe the fourth time that I've questioned a no bid deal, and it keeps coming up every time after time, and it's making a mockery of the requirements from the state of Illinois on getting bids.
Yeah, I'm sorry you feel that way. We have a number of new maintenance team members. As you know, we've had a lot of turnover. So it was when we realized how much time those older team members we're using to take care of that clinic equipment, and Bobby could speak to that as well, but trying to train them on older equipment wasn't even a possibility, so.
Does this bid include, I think there's like cabinetry that goes around these, does it include that too? And does it include removal of the old chairs and cabinetry?
I believe it includes the removal of the old chairs, yeah.
There should be some trade-in value to that, those chairs.
Chairs, but they'll remove the old chairs and put the new chairs in. Sort of like getting a washer and dryer delivered, they haul it off, give you the new one.
So they're gonna haul off the cabinets and the old chairs?
I hope so. If not, we might ask for you to give us a hand if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well,
I believe so, Kevin.
I have a question on the Northwest parking lot replacement, and I apologize if you've told us this before, but it says the additional information says 100,000 funded from SIUC. Why are they giving us money?
That's historical.
Very good question. I'm trying to think back. I think we outlined that in the notes to the board, but right before the pandemic, so SIUC offers a motorcycle safety course on this campus. They have for many years, and they've always used that lot, and that's that really degraded lot that has started to wash away, that goes down into. So they came to us before the pandemic saying, we have a grant. Would you be willing to, do a cost share so that we can make improvements to that lot? And that's where we started, and we're finally just getting through that process. So.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so there being no further discussion, call the roll.
McCaig? Wertz?
yes.
Griffin?
Yes.
Ware?
Yes.
McCain?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Rust?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Okay, motion approved. Do I have a motion to approve item J, purchases requiring board approval?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, I have a first and second. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question. My overriding question is, we're spending $1 million here without any bids. How does that work? Has this money already been dispersed? It hasn't been dispersed yet, has it? Have we received any?
Yeah, Brett, this is, yeah.
Sure,
is he on?
I'd be happy to jump in a little here. So the purchasing requirements from the state, Kevin, do not require us to bid technology. And I think the reason that it does not require the technology bid is because it's so unique to the solution that we're proposing. So once again, we've elected to go with Dell equipment. And as we kind of mentioned before, we go to our first vendor for Dell. So it happens to be CDW here in this particular purchase. And CDW does not quote the equipment. They turn around and go to Dell, and Dell provides the price quote from them. So if we get competitive price quotes, Dell doesn't change the price or doesn't give another competitor a different one, because it's all Dell quoting Dell equipment. So it's consistent across the board. Does that speak to your concerns?
Well, not exactly, because last fall when we purchased 175 computers, we did get bids.
And in that instance, we followed board policy because the funds for those purchases were grant funds, and our board approved policy requires that we bid that. Ironically, the bid worked the same way. We bought similar equipment. CDW was the purchases that I recall, and we did the same thing. We bid the equipment, but Dell provided the ultimate price quote from which we purchased. But in that instance, the funding mechanism for that was grant funds, and our internal policy requires that we bid when we're purchasing with grant funds. These are not grant funds that are being used for that, so our internal policy does not require that. So we go back to state law, and state law provides an exception to technology purposes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm only getting about half of what you're saying there, Brett.
Is it a sound issue?
The source of the funding between the two, we bid the 175 computers, and now we're not bidding these, and I don't see any difference.
The difference is the source of the funding, sir. So when we purchased the 175 laptops, that was a grant funding that we used HERF money for that, the federal money from the COVID relief fund. And our internal policy requires that we bid when we exceed a certain dollar amount. And off the top of my head, I cannot recall what that limit is. So by our own policy, we were required to bid the laptops. In this instance, the funding source is not grant money. The funding source is operational funds, and therefore we do not follow our grant purchasing requirements. We follow our regular purchasing requirements. And regular purchasing requirements at the state level has an exception for technology purchases.
It has an exception, but it doesn't mean that we have to not solicit bids. I think
that is a true statement, sir.
I mean, it just doesn't make any common sense to me to spend $1 million and not get bids.
Well, here's something to think about.
Beyond believability.
I understand what your concern is, and I would look at it this way too. And I think this is probably one of the things to think about is, as I explained before, because we're looking at Dell equipment specifically, and there are reasons why we've standardized around Dell. Part of it being that our staff are trained in Dell, and so we're licensed to do warranty repairs. They send us the reports. We do our own repairs. That's a big advantage, because that means we don't have to send broken equipment into Dell for repairs and then ship it back to us, right? So there's a lot of reasons why we've standardized around Dell. That's just one of them. So when we go to purchase Dell equipment, we go to a vendor like CDW, who we're presenting to you this evening. CDW turns around and goes directly to Dell to get that bid. And it doesn't matter whether we went to CDW or 14 other vendors that are trying to sell equipment to us, they would all turn around and go to Dell for the price quote. And so we would end up with the same quote regardless.
And I would say bottom line is that we are following policy and we're consistent with that. So if I think the board wants to take a different direction or give us a different direction as administration, then we're happy to consider that.
I think the purchase, like this purchase, needs to be bid, and there's no reason why we have to stay with Dell equipment. That's preposterous. I'm quite familiar enough with laptops and computers to know that when it comes to computers, there's not a dime's worth of difference between most of them. And whoever's telling you that we need to be using Dell equipment is giving you a line.
I respectfully disagree, sir. I would tell you that there are tons of reasons for us to standardize around a single one. For instance, it's just a simple one. We're purchasing 1,000 PCs here in this one lot. If we decided to go with a different brand on this 1,000 PCs, we would have to obtain or manage an operating system install that is significantly different than what we've done for Dell. For instance, we don't just sit there with disks and install the software that needs to go onto these. We use images, right? And so these images that go on, if we start getting HP and Asus and Acer, we would have to develop an image for each brand, because each flavor of operating system is different from vendor to vendor to vendor. And so by standardizing, we save time and effort in getting these PCs distributed to where they need to be in the most cost-effective manner. That's just one example of what are the advantages of standardizing in the way we purchase for an organization our size.
Thank you, Brett.
I would add that the Community College Act does provide an exception to the purchase for technology. So that's the direction that the college follows. If the Board of Trustees would like to adopt a different policy, then that's what they should do. But, you know, the college is following state law at this point.
And I would say, to echo Brett's comments is it's pretty common for an institution to have a standard operating system, a standard, sort of a common laptop or computer for those very reasons. I mean, maintenance, familiarity with the systems, it goes a long way. I mean, I think the team's already sort of pressed for time. There's so much happening that, we're going to change every year or every 3 years. I mean, that's additional lifting that is really avoidable. Plus, I think to the point made earlier and to reinforce, we are following policy, state law. We're trying to keep things as efficient as we possibly can, so, yeah.
Well, I agree with your logic. If this was 100 computers, yeah, it makes a lot more sense. But when you're talking about 1,000 computers, it seems to me like we could have standardized with some other company. It doesn't have to be Dell. It could be HP, for example, or it could be ASICs or so on. And
Respectfully, sir, we have over 3,000 PCs on campus right now. If we changed horses now, it would literally be changing horses midstream. Regardless, if we change, it's going to require double the maintenance and double double the effort, because it would be a different platform that we're not used to seeing right now.
I see that
Very similar to what Southwest Airlines does. That's why they're the low-cost carrier.
Call for vote. Call for vote.
Okay, do we need a vote on calling for a vote, or can we just? Okay, call a roll.
McCaig,
Yes.
Wertz,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
No?
Trent.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve item N, grant or sponsored contract opportunities?
Make the motion?
Motion.
Okay, I have a first and second. Discussion.
Yeah, just a couple things, minor really, but the one grant opportunity has a term of July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. And I guess it just struck me as being are we kind of late in getting this in, or how does this work?
Which one are you looking at?
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the identifier number is 4.11.23-5.
You're talking about the IEPA
Right.
pass-through funding for National Great Rivers.
Yeah.
Previously to this year, the IEPA funding was an actual federal pass-through of dollars to Lewis and Clark for the purposes of INGRID. State guidelines have changed over the last year, and they now require that all of these kinds of funds, and our pass-through appropriation is just one of many, that they all be treated as a grant in terms of the budget, not necessarily in terms of the program, and ours is not, but in terms of the budget, they're treated as a grant. So in March, I was contacted, not having any previous information about this, to request that we fill out a grant document, which we did. And so what will happen is that grant document is complete now. It's with IEPA, and they will backfill the funding back to the beginning of the year, and then we'll continue on from this point. So the advantage to this is that it puts it on us a regular calendar year, and it's more accountable for the state. So that's what this is. It's not, we did it immediately when we got it, but we didn't know this change was going to occur, because normally what's happened is that this pass-through appropriation usually shows up as a check from IEPA around the middle of the year. And of course, when it didn't show up in January or February, I was beginning to get nervous, but it's there, and I knew it was coming. But now it's coming as a grant instead of a pass-through.
Okay, so it's kind of like a retroactive
Absolutely.
Paperwork for the bureaucrats to cover themselves or something like that anyway.
All of us.
Now, the
yes.
next year, of course, is for this coming year, July 1st, 2023, and the next 12 months. That's,
So for the next 12 months, we'll do this grant document now.
yeah, it's already being done. I'm looking at it, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, by the way, on that document, though, it did refer to Nate Keener, if you have questions. So I think Nate has not moved on, didn't he?
Yeah, this was submitted, yeah.
Okay.
After the report was
So it might be,
generated.
I don't know
so-
if it's probably not a big deal, but if the paperwork should say somebody other than Nate Keener.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
Nate was in the Director of Grant Management and Sustainability role. He's since
So Nate would have
resigned.
originally
Yeah.
been involved, but he had already left when we started this, so it was referred to Brett's office. So I think that's just an artifact of the system that's got to be changed. But we were timely. We didn't, there were no delays. In fact, we were way more timely than the state agency.
Is this fiscal year the first year for the 4 million or the second?
This is the second year.
Second.
And then beginning July 1 will be the third year.
The third year, okay.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Call the roll.
McCaig,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Wertz,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
McCain.
Yes.
Okay, motion passed. So let's move on to action items. Do I have a motion to authorize President to work with Board Chair to establish a decennial committee on local government efficiency no later than June 10th, 2023, in accordance with Illinois Public Act 102-1088.
And the hope would be to have that established and approved by the May board meeting, so.
Do I
I'll
have a
make the-
first or second?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, call for the vote.
McCaig,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Wertz,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve the settlement agreement with Bella Milano to close out the Godfrey campus exclusive services?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
McCaig,
Yes.
Wertz,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Do I have a motion to approve the approved contract with Bella Milano for exclusive catering services at the N.O. Nelson campus?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
McCaig,
Yes.
Wertz,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
McCain,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent.
Yes.
Motion carried. Okay, item D. Do I have a motion to approve revisions to Personnel Policy 505, anti-harassment and anti-discrimination?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
McCaig,
Yes.
Griffin,
Yes.
Wertz,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rust,
Yes.
Trent,
Yes.
Ware,
Yes.
McCain.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. All right, we'll move on to informational items. Dr. Traska?
Yeah, so the one, if there's questions on A through G, let us know, but H, we have Brad Rashier, Director of Safety, who's going to give us a little bit of an update on a really exciting project, so thank you.
Yes, good evening. Let me introduce myself. I think this is the first time I've formally presented to the board which is probably a good thing, right? Because you don't want to hear from campus safety. So my name is Brad Raish. I'm the Director of Campus Safety. The first thing I'd like to do is thank the Board of Trustees and Dr. Traska for your continued support for campus safety. One of the things that came out of that support is a new program, a new pilot program that we're going to start here at Lewis and Clark. Dr. Traska reached out to me end of last year, and with his community involvement was able to get me in touch with Madison County Transit and their executive team, who graciously donated to our campus safety program 2 e-bicycles to our program. So to my left, to your right, is our kind of inaugural bike patrol. So I kind of want to introduce the officers if I can. Sergeant Michael Mayberry, Sergeant Matt Schaefer, Officer Daniel Naruz, and Officer Todd George. These gentlemen have started their training process. They've done their safety training, their online training. Next is to hit the road, and we are going to start that this weekend. And by next week, these officers will be out and about. So this is a big program for us. We're very excited. Not only is this going to expedite our response time for emergency calls, as well as just be more interactive with our students, it's also going to get back to the community as we're going to start patrolling our wood line, where we actually are starting to have bike trails being built. We have a bike trail over by the baseball fields, so all of that's going to be open and accessible for our officers to start patrolling. So again, thank you to Madison County Transit, and a big thank you to Dr. Traska for that gracious donation. A couple other things, since I have your undivided attention, and it's all good news from campus safety. I want to talk to you about some trainings that we're bringing back. So COVID kind of put trainings on the back burner, not for our campus safety officers, but what we can do for our students, faculty, staff. So a couple of the trainings that are rolling out. On April 21st from 9 to 11, campus safety is going to conduct an active shooter training. This is for all faculty and staff to attend. This will be a 2-hour extensive active shooter training based on all the recent events. It's just time to get back in front of that. So that'll be on April 21st in this room. On April 28th, campus safety will be conducting a verbal de-escalation class. This class teaches what to look for when somebody is starting to get irate or hostile. That training will actually take place at Scott Bibb and the Scott Bibb faculty staff there. On May 4th and 5th, campus safety is sponsoring a active self-defense class. So it will be, we offer one evening or afternoon and then one morning on a Thursday, Friday. This is open for faculty, staff, and students to enroll. It's free. It's sponsored by Campus Safety. We try to do this twice a year, one time in April or May, and then in September, which is Campus Safety Awareness Month. Finally, on May 9th, Campus Safety will do a site-specific active shooter training with our INGREC faculty and staff out there, just because of their unique situation with their building and just the different clientele that they interact with. So just some upcoming trainings and our new programs, and I am here if you have any questions.
What do those bikes cost?
So the bikes on average cost between $2,500 and $3,000. They're the first time Madison County Transit has donated electric bikes, so they are battery operated. Some of the cool features with the bikes, they come obviously all decked out, lights, sirens, but the nice thing is they have pedal assist. They can go 50 miles without even being pedaled. They can go up to 28 miles an hour. So the response time is actually pretty great, because we can, you don't have to use the roads. It's accessible anywhere on campus. And it also helps the officers stay out on the bikes longer because of that assisted pedal. So we've created policies and procedures for their safety, as well as their interaction with our students. Myself and our site supervisor went and visited a few different sites that already have bike programs, and they are very jealous of our bikes.
Did MCT provide bikes before this?
So they have. So what they've done in the past is once a year they'll pick a police department who doesn't have a bike program, and they'll donate roughly 3 or 4 bikes to that program. They've done Alton, I think Maryville, and a few others. This time around, for the e-bikes, they actually gave Lewis and Clark 2 and SIUE 2, so we were both given it at the same time. So just a wonderful way for us to give back to the community and our students.
I just want to let you know, I always feel very safe here.
Wonderful. That's a good thing.
Even though this is the first time you've spoken, so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks, gentlemen.
So, Dr. Traskett, did you want to say anything about the iPads report? Like key takeaways, positives and negatives?
Well, I mean, I think the key takeaway is that, and you
I'm
can
here, by the
refer to
way,
that in
if
the
anyone
book,
needs me to speak to this.
214 to 234. But I think a really good testament again to our team is that we are still outperforming many of our peers.
Hello.
Oh, there he is. Allow me to introduce Dennis Creed.
Thank you.
Who will do a much better job than I would. So thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, hello, everybody. My name is Dennis Creed, and I'm the Director of Institutional Research and Library Services at Lewis and Clark. This will be short, but it is really good news that I want to share with everyone. Every year, the Department of Education produces a report called the iPads Data Feedback Report. Got a lot of good information in it, but what's nice about this report is it benchmarks Lewis and Clark against peer institutions throughout the United States. In our case, there are 34 of these institutions. 6 of these institutions are within Illinois. So it's really a good gauge to see how we're doing with really all the other community colleges throughout the United States based upon similar characteristics of our school. So we've been following roughly 5 metrics since 2014 on this report that we feel that are important. I'm going to go over these real quickly, but I think it's remarkable in terms of how we've done over really the course of around 10 years on these metrics. So, and hopefully these are viewable for you in your packet. The first is full-time retention. Lewis and Clark had 65% on the full-time retention. Our peer cohort had 61. That marked the 11th straight year we beat our cohort on full-time retention. On part-time retention, we had a 43% retention rate for part-time students. Our cohort had 41. That marked the 9th straight year we had beaten our cohort for part-time retention. Our graduation rate, which is really figured on 3 years or 150% time, we beat our cohort for the 7th straight year. We were at 51%. Our cohort was at 35. For our graduation rate for white students, this was our 8th straight year where we exceeded our cohort. We had 48% compared to the cohort of 40%. And then for graduation rate for African-American students, again, 8 straight years, we beat the cohort at 29% for us and 17% for the cohort. So I think, from my perspective, this is something we should all be really proud of at Lewis and Clark to have this consistent success over the span of time on these really key metrics. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Dennis.
Well, I got a comment. On page 10, there's a graph, or figure 7, says average net price of attendance for full-time, first-time, degree-seeking, blah, 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 blah. We're a lot lower. Is that an accurate number? I mean, as one of my goals is to keep our tuition and fees down. Is that telling me that we're accomplishing that, or is this an aberration, or what has this been in the past?
That's a great question and observation, and I think it's a philosophy of the institution. I mean, to give you an example, I mean, I've known of institutions that sort of have the philosophy that you sort of pay for what you get, and one could argue that, well, they just have a lot of expenses and they need to cover those expenses, so typically that cost will be passed on to the student. I think it's a really good philosophy to try to ground ourselves in doing the most that we can in the most efficient way for our students. It doesn't mean that from time to time we may not have to evaluate tuition and fees in order to keep up with inflation, to keep up with the other needs, because we want to maintain a strong team, we want to maintain strong services, but I think it's a balance. In my opinion, I think we should be right there in the middle. You don't want to be too high, you don't want to be too low. I think, being right there in the middle is probably a good place to be. So it's not a bad thing that we're lower than the average, but it might signal to us that we need to evaluate that as we move forward. So, but it's tough because you're passing. I mean, that's a part of our revenue that is not a given. And so if you raise tuition and fees too much, you could deter or sort of for students to look at a more reasonable option, so.
Oh, although a lot of it's paid for by scholarships, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, I think
Some,
it's,
yeah.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
a competitive advantage that we need to have because there's a lot of technical schools, et cetera, that will
Yeah.
charge, you know, in my opinion, a really high amount and get something better here.
Yeah.
So, another page I wanted to look at was page 15, where it says core expenses per FTE enrollment by function fiscal year 2021. And it shows that our expenses on instruction were 10,000 some, I guess that's per FTE, and our peers were 6,100. Is that because our FTEs were low that year, or is it because our salaries are high in instruction?
So I don't have that correlation in front of me. I don't know, Dennis, if you could look at that, but I would say this, and I'm gonna. So.
I mean, COVID would have had an impact on our FTEs.
Yeah, for sure,
for
sure,
right?
For sure, but I think yeah, absolutely. But I would say what I think we pride ourselves on is we have a really talented team, and I'm not just saying that. And I mean that requires a certain level of investment. And so and we've seen this over the years. I mean, tuition has kind of gone up and down and up and down, and we saw for the first time in a lot of years, we saw an increase. But our reputation didn't sort of like sway. I mean, we still invested in the team that we had. We've obviously made some changes, created additional efficiencies, but I think that's a really difficult correlation to make. I mean, absolutely, if enrollment goes down, does that immediately mean that we have to make some radical changes? Because then what if, like we've seen, enrollment begins to tick up because we're putting in place strategies and efforts to make that happen, and then we go out to scramble to find somebody to replace that person. So it's a really tricky balance, Julie, and I know we've talked about this, but it's a tricky one because you want to maintain that level of investment in the team because that's about commitment and effectiveness, and I think students see that, and and you begin to have that reputation as a place where you have commitment long-term, and so students, I think, reflect that. It's like programs. A great program is led by a great faculty member. It's led by great support systems around that program that goes all the way in every direction, up, down, zigzag throughout the organization, whether it's financial aid, whether it's that first touch with that student, whether it's mental health services, whatever it may be. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but I think we should always be at a level where we feel we're making the best investment we can to maintain a high standard for our students, so. That's a long answer, but just a little philosophical, but yeah.
It was a long
You can just turn my mic off. I think you have that ability. So.
No, I'm not going to do that. But, just to pile on, that public service, institutional support, academic support were, student services were higher in all of them, but, I'm going to just assume that we're doing a great job in all those areas because we're spending more, right?
Absolutely.
I would just say that, what we just spoke about, those success metrics may bear witness to that, those investments we've made. So, it's an issue of quality. You've got really good faculty here, and we're seeing great grad rates and retention, and so I think that just might be what you have to do to make our students successful.
Yes, I agree. I didn't mean to put a negative light on the whole thing, but the 5 metrics that you pointed out, they're very good. I'm very happy about it, and we should be proud of that. So,
thanks, Julie.
Any other comments on that? Okay. Okay, so.
It's me again.
Did you have any more you wanted in
Just
informational items?
just really quickly. I mean, we've heard this a few times already, but wanted to again publicly thank not only the internal team but the Board of Trustees, our external stakeholders who participated as well in our HLC site visit last Monday and Tuesday. That is an exhausting effort for everyone, so I want to thank the writing team, everybody who participated, which quite frankly, whether individuals realize this or not, everyone had a part to do in a successful visit, so we can expect within the next 30 days, now probably around 3 weeks, we should have that formal report from the Higher Learning Commission, and then we would begin to get to work in addressing any observations that they put formally into that report. So I want to thank everyone for their participation there. I also wanted to publicly thank, because it's really, again, reignited me even more, thank the College Board and the Foundation Board for supporting a very quick trip I took to Denver a couple Saturdays ago now to essentially initiate a innovation network for competency-based education, particularly focused on policy development at the Department of Education. Draft policy memo has been written. I drafted this this past weekend, sent it out to that innovation group or that network, and already starting to get feedback with the goal of submitting a letter to the Department of Education and hopefully begin to see some movement around moving away from this sort of archaic, not to be a criticism, sort of Carnegie model of seat time, credit hours, and really look at how we can create more dynamic and agile models of access for community colleges and, quite frankly, higher education in general. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to make that trip. And then also just a reminder, the ICCTA, there's a legislative day on May 2nd and 3rd, so I know I'll be going. I don't know if, Kevin, you're going to be going to that, but that's coming up, so we'll be able to make some sort of structured legislative visits, and again, sort of put ourselves out there as advocates to this community college work and to, of course, supporting our students. Just on, and I wanted to just highlight two things, you know, in both reinforcing HLC's visit, but two things that came out that we've known about, but now we're looking at how do we continue to invest in this model. But the liaison network model, which Dr. Jackson referred to, has really gained some really great traction in our high schools. And so I think we need to really think about this in a more strategic way and carefully in looking at what type of investment do we continue to make in that model, because that is really the bridge, kind of going to your questions too, Kevin, around sort of dual credit, you know, concurrent enrollment, and really engaging students earlier on in the process to look at Lewis and Clark, to look at our programs, and to know that we have these support systems and these great faculty and support teams to allow them to have a great educational experience. So we're starting to look at that a little bit more intentionally and potentially going to link that into the next version of our strategic plan in terms of wanting to say, hey, over the next year or two, we want to add X number of liaisons to further engage our high school students into Lewis and Clark. And then I'm not going to get into it publicly, but I've updated the board on this, that there's really some exciting developments with our District 7 partnership related to the Manny Jackson Center, and as well as the Current Technical Education Regional Center, so more to come on that, but I'm just really happy with the progress that we've made and want to reiterate the support the board gave about a year or so ago now with Manny Jackson Center, because that's now coming to fruition in the ways that I really felt it would. So I want to thank you again for that support. That concludes my riveting update. Thank you.
So we kind of glossed over the recognition report. Did you feel it was important?
Oh, Dr. Artis, yeah, please. Thank you, Julie. Yeah.
If you would let me. We thank you, Julie, for taking the time. We just want to recognize 3 of our outstanding team members. Kimberly Kleinschmidt is our coordinator of liability insurance and campus operations, and you heard me reference earlier a lot of turnover. We've had a ton of retirements on our maintenance team, and so Kimberly was nominated this month for just being that constant. She's kind of provided some consistency for us and picked up a lot of slack in our campus operations day to day, as well as volunteering anytime, any hour to help out. So we want to give Kimberly some appreciation. And Jessica Noble, she actually shared this story, and I hadn't heard it in such detail during the HLC visit, but if you'll recall, Officer Tyler Timmons was a Pontoon Beach police officer and was killed in the line of duty. Officer Timmons and his wife were both students in Jessica's program here and met here, and Jessica became ordained and actually married Officer Timmons and his wife. And so through Jessica's leadership and work with the foundation, we now have a Officer Tyler Timmons scholarship. It's a $30,000 endowment level. So want to recognize Jessica's leadership in her program and just in her engagement with her students. And then just a big shout out to Jared Hennings. I know there are some people in this room who put their bodies on the line literally for the student, staff, faculty volleyball tournament. It was a really fun event. I do have to mention that my team was the last standing staff team in the tournament. So, oh, wait, we're talking about Jared Hennings. So Jared Hennings coordinated this, and I just have to say it was wonderful. I think there was probably more than 10 teams that came out for this, and it was just a great opportunity for some of us to get out of our offices and really interact with the students, get to know the students, get to know other staff members. Just a really great afternoon of engagement with our entire campus culture. So thank you to all those team members, and thank you, Julie.
But no workers' comp claims from that.
So, thank you, Lori. So two more things I know I saw with pharmacy tech. I don't know if Sue wants to mention anything, but Carrie Sackman, who's our faculty member there, just wanted to congratulate them on their accreditation. So a positive visit, yeah. So.
How are we doing student-wise? We had like one last year.
We have 3 students.
Three students
and
this year.
we are evaluating that, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
So statistically, we've tripled our enrollment.
We have.
We've
It's
tripled our
quite
enrollment.
remarkable, yeah. So
I think that's
appreciate that.
That's the mic drop. That's how we stop, you know, that's it. Now, we're still struggling because, of course, that law got pushed back a couple more years, and so.
We have a lot of competition from the pharmacies of the world, right?
Oh, yeah, they can train them on the job,
Yeah,
and
so
that's the
there's
problem is.
the value of CBE. See,
Some of them pay their people to go through the program, but I'll bet they don't have the flexibility that we do.
Right.
Exactly.
But, yeah, they can do on-the-job training, and then they just go sit for a test. The law would have made them have to come through a program, but, yeah, I don't know when that's ever going to come back around. But, yeah, it was great that Casey put in a lot of work to get that program accredited, and we're really proud of her for doing that.
Haven't you found in the past, Sue, that when you start new programs like this, sometimes enrollment is small, and then over time, as it builds and people continue to word of mouth and things, it builds over time. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to invest in it, and then over time, it'll improve and get better.
Yeah.
That's what I know. Sometimes when we start new programs, I've noticed that as well. Like it
Yeah.
starts out really small enrollment to the point you're like, do we really want to do this? And then in the end, it ends up being a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, Restoration Ecology had a very slow start.
Okay.
Very slow start, and we just kind of, and the only good thing was that instructor could also teach in the biology department. So we could use his time. So it wasn't, this Casey can only do that, and so it makes it a little bit more financially hard to do that as well. But we're trying to give it, you know, time, and fingers crossed. She's been promoting it everywhere, so yeah, we're just hoping we could turn that around.
Sue, implementation from the state has been postponed twice.
Yep.
Do you know what year they're looking at now? And have we talked to legislators
I
about it?
think it's like January of 24, I think it might be, or 25.
It's 25.
25.
25?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was supposed to, it started as 21, and it just kept getting pushed back.
And so the program is really initiated in response to that, to
Right.
sort of get ahead of the curve, and then it's been sluggish in moving forward from there. That's a tricky part, because if it's needed, but I mean, you know, it's an investment that we're committing to, whether it's 3 students or 1 student. So that's a question
That's
we
the
have
hard
to ask
part.
ourselves. So.
I think pharmacies will still want it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
State implementation would be better, so I'll make
Right.
some phone calls.
Yep, yep. They did the same thing with truck driving. Truck driving, they were supposed to, before they could get a CDL, they were supposed to have to go through a program, and that got pushed back. I think that's all the way back to 26. So, yeah.
Yeah, come on down on May 2nd. Let's shake it up a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Good?
yeah.
So I think now would be an appropriate time before we go to closed session to recognize Brenda and her contributions to the board. Dr.
Yes.
Treck?
So I know there were some really amazing comments made by Debbie and team. I've had an opportunity to work with Brenda for now 2.5 years, and been around a lot of boards and a lot of great leaders, but I have to say you by far exceed anything I could have ever expected from a support system, somebody to lean on, somebody to get advice from. So your wisdom, your energy, your commitment to this college is remarkable. And I want to thank you personally for everything you've done prior to me being here, and everything you've done to help me move forward as a president, but in part, that becomes an extension of you supporting this team and believing in my leadership and always believing in this team. So thank you. I know you'll still be an advisor from afar, but we appreciate you, Brenda, and words cannot match what you mean to this institution, so thank you. So I'll keep going. And we have a plaque for you that I'd like to give you.
Okay, so after that, have a roll call to begin closed session. Sorry, need a first and second.
Motion. Second.
Okay, now.
McCaig?
Yes.
Trent?
Yes.
Wertz?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Rust?
Yes.
Griffin?
Yes.
Ware?
Yes.
McCain?
Yes.
Okay, and to clarify, that was to adjourn to closed session, yes.